Hey, everyone out there and rambling about Racing Nation. Matt Beamer here, joined with Austin Reeves and Charlie Hercus, getting ready to break down the NASCAR races from Sonoma, the Formula One Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and the Indy Car race from Road America. Let's get into it. This is a production of ITM Media. Yeah, it was a interesting week of racing. A lot of road courses, a lot of right turns and left turns. Not what you're used to seeing on a normal race weekend. You're used to turning left one racer out of the few that have been run there. But hello, everyone. Matt Beamer here, joining you from the ITM Media Studio. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube here, bringing you and breaking down for you the latest and greatest from the world of auto racing, including this past weekend's races at Sonoma, Road America, and the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But before we get started on everything, Charlie Hercus and Austin Reeves are joining me. We're going to start off with Austin. How's it going, man? And we got a present for you that we sent to you through the mail. How are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it real well.
No, don't do that. I mean, what are you doing, man? You can't just go crazy with everything.
I had to show it off.
No, yeah, you can't move it though. It makes a lot of noise, man.
I know.
But
Everything's going good. We had our gender reveal this weekend. Went better than I expected. We're having a boy and a girl.
So a boy and a girl. Congratulations on that, Austin. Now you got to explain it to me because I saw the video, and when I saw the video, it first came out two girls, and your reaction wasn't that of I don't know how to put it, but it wasn't happy. Let's just say that. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah. So when everybody found out we were pregnant with twins, everybody just hounded on me. You're having twin girls. I was like, come on, man, give me a shot. And I saw that pink go off first, and I was like, yeah, yep, here we go, twin girls. And then my buddy Brandon, I wanted to do a burnout for a gender reveal because we had to do a gender reveal, and we told him Friday what we handed the envelope with the gender pics in it, and he said, I want baby A. All right, and I saw that blue smoke, and I got a little bit excited. So I'm glad to have a little boy and a little girl.
Yeah, it was very, very nice of them to throw that whole party out there for you. Congratulations. Hopefully everything goes well, man. I'll be praying for you throughout the course of the pregnancy. Twins, that's a heavy load to bear for any first-time parent. I can only imagine how that will be, and I'm looking forward to watching everybody get together and one day us bring our children to the racetrack. It'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, that does sound pretty fun. We'll have to wait and see about that.
We definitely will. And of course, now we're always joined here by Charlie Hercus, the resident short track racer there from South Alabama Motor Speedway. Charlie, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining us. How's your week been?
It's been good. Started back to work full time this past week after the wreck and all that kind of fun stuff. So trying to get caught back up at work. Luckily, don't have to worry about any racing from me this weekend. We got about a month off before our first race. We're off the schedule this weekend. My class is just going to be a little short on the car count due to it being Father's Day weekend and stuff. So they took us off the schedule altogether. But other than that, man, it's going good. Got a birthday to celebrate this weekend, so it worked out. With Kelsey's birthday being Saturday, she doesn't have to spend it at the racetrack with me, so it works out pretty good.
All right. Well, glad everything's going well, and I got to make a few confessions here. One, we're doing things a little differently this week on YouTube Live and Facebook. We're not doing the single setup series, so if you see me kind of look to my right here, that's where the monitor is. If you want to chat and give us a shout out, we'll definitely give you a shout out here on the show. And so we're trying to do full screen because it looks better on YouTube. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to YouTube and hit that notification bell. It'll let you know when we're going live and when clips of the episode come out. But I do have to make a confession here. During last week's episode, as Charlie and Austin both generously pointed out to not only myself, but the audience listening to the show as well as watching the show live, I had a bit too many to drink, and I was quite embarrassed about that. And I have to publicly apologize. I feel really bad about that. And yet here I am with a few beers in front of me, drinking them. But I took a little break from drinking this whole week, so feel bad for that. So sorry about that. Brandon Holt, what's up, man? Thanks for joining us here. And yeah, I just wanted to apologize for that. But I did set out a poll here real quick. I set out a poll, and it was, what do you want to see come back to the show? And it was between the driver of the week, the news, movie reviews, and debates. And only one person voted, but I'm going to leave it up to Charlie and Austin here to do a quick vote here. Charlie, if you could bring anything back from the past episodes, what would it be? Debate, movie reviews, driver of the week, or the news?
I'd have to go with driver of the week. We got away from it because we were worried that we were just going to start overlapping. But, I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of drivers out there that we haven't went over that we could. It's just on our end to do a little bit more research. So,
yeah, you're 100% right about that, buddy. And I want to bring that back eventually, but that wasn't what was voted. We only had one vote on the poll here, and I'm gonna tell you guys what it was, but not until after Austin tells us what he would like to bring back. Austin, you weren't around for driver of the week when it first came out, but what do you want to see come back? What would you want to start adding to the show again?
What are we debating?
So the poll was, what would you want to bring back to the show? Would you want to bring back driver of the week, which we used to do at the end of every show in our final thoughts segment, or this week in that, or not this week in NASCAR, but our movie review? So we take a racing movie and review it. The news, which we talk about the news of auto racing, which I do have a piece of news information I want to share to you guys, or a debate, which I kind of falls into the question of the week, I feel. But what would you want to see come back?
Never say driver of the week.
Okay. So 2 for driver of the week. Only one vote was cast for that poll, and it was for the news. And I'd hate to just kind of bring back the news for that, but I do have a piece of news story I want to share with you guys. So let's get into it. The news of auto racing. I haven't played that soundbite in a long time, ladies and gentlemen. If you're an old listener of the show, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is kind of a big news, and I'm surprised that we're going back to this, to be honest with you. And it is in 2023. This is from Speedway Media, that we are returning for the Busch Clash to the LA Coliseum. And I really don't know how to make heads or tails of that. Not a big fan of it, but I'm going to get your guys' opinion first. I'm going to get Charlie's opinion first. LA Coliseum for the 2023 Clash. How do you feel about that?
Personally, I enjoyed the races at the Coliseum. However, I don't think it should be the Clash. I get they play football there throughout the year as well, so it's kind of hard to do later in the year. But I would rather see an all-star race held there or something like that. But the racing overall, I was happy with how the Clash went. I thought everything was handled really good. Maybe not the stop middle ways through the final race and put on a TV commercial, because that wasn't even a concert. Let's face it. I don't know what that was they played, but I would rather. I'd rather see it as an all-star race. I really would, instead of the Clash.
Yeah, I would too, and I would feel bad for. I don't know why. I thought the LA Coliseum was a great thing that they did. They proved that you can build a racetrack within a Coliseum and in a football field, in a sense, and race it there. And I felt like that would open the door to possibilities of maybe going to like Lambeau Field, Giants Stadium, all these different venues that you wouldn't normally see a NASCAR race at, and have to clash there. Maybe like Tampa Bay Stadium, Miami Dolphins Stadium, just whatever, baseball or football stadiums. And I feel like NASCAR is missing an opportunity going back to the West Coast and then coming back for the rest of the conclusion of Speed Weeks, marking it off with the Daytona 500. So I'm not a big fan of it, but
yeah, if I may, if anything there, go to the Midwest or Northwest or something like that. Maybe not necessarily just the West Coast, but Northwest or Midwest or somewhere like that NASCAR really doesn't touch very often. That, quite frankly, we have a lot of drivers come out of, the Wisconsin area or something like that. There's plenty of fields that they could have done it at. So it doesn't necessarily have to go back to the West Coast.
No, it necessarily doesn't. You're 100% right there. Austin, what do you think? Is it a good call for NASCAR to go back to the LA Coliseum for the Clash?
Yeah, I might have to agree with Charlie. I wouldn't run as a Clash. I'd run it more as an all-star race. Really wouldn't stop the race midway through and have a concert. I enjoyed it. They really tested the cars out, making its first debut on TV and all. I'd watch it again. So
yeah, and that's the catch-22 of the whole thing. It was a very successful race, and unfortunately, because of that, NASCAR thinks it'll strike gold again. Maybe it'll be sold out again or sold out more, and more people will show up there. Help tracks like Sonoma get more people. It would help tracks like California Speedway, Las Vegas, just tracks around that area of the country get more people. Or it might just be we did it once, it worked great, and why do it again? I don't know. It's just one of those things with that.
It may be one of those things just like COTA last year. COTA was a crap fest of a race last year. And then they come back this year, and it was a much, much better race. So it may be a 2-year trial. That first year was, let's run it. We found out what worked. We found out what didn't. The racing was good. Either play the concert after or in between the heat races, so to speak, and then the final race. But don't stop the final race halfway through, like I said. But I enjoyed it overall. I think the second year will really determine, if it's worth staying there, or if it was a success there, let's try it elsewhere. Why not?
No, I agree, and it's kind of a waste of money. That's $1 million down the drain to put down the asphalt, make the track, and then just rip it back up. Where if you can invest that money into another market, to your point, like the Northwest and Wisconsin, other places like that, the Midwest, you could probably gain more attention back to like Chicagoland. But doing it in LA at the LA Coliseum, which was great fun, but you have California Motor Speedway right down the road. So you already have a track there. Why not just do it at the California Motor Speedway? That's just me. It is what it is. Well, and I think it'll be a good race, but I'm not really happy with it going back to the Coliseum.
Yeah, if you're going to do that, just run it on one of the oval tracks that's on the front straightaway of some of these 1.5-mile tracks.
No, I 100% agree, but that was the only piece of news that I had. We'll get more into the other news stories throughout the course of the show, but we're going to answer last week's question of the week right at the start of the show because I failed to do it when I was really, really inebriated the following week. And inebriated. And last week's question of the week was, if Dodge were to come back to the sport, which team would jump to that manufacturer first? And since it was Charlie's question of the week, I'm going to leave it up to Charlie to answer that question first and tell us who he thinks would jump ship first.
It's a tricky question, and I'm glad I asked it, but with Brad Keselowski going over to Roush and them not really having the success that they used to have over the years, back when like Matt Kenseth drove for them and all that kind of stuff, I would say a team like Roush would chance it and be like, you know what, it's a new product coming back. We got pretty much a brand new team with Keselowski coming on and it being RFK racing now. I see somebody like Roush jumping ship and jumping on board with Dodge.
I do and I don't at the same time. Roush has a long history with Ford, but at the same time, we've seen teams jump over before. We saw Joe Gibbs jump from a Pontiac to a Chevy and into Toyota. We've seen Stuart Haas jump from Chevy to Ford.
Yeah, nobody ever thought they just saw Kevin Harvick in a Ford. So,
no.
I mean, let's face it. So when he come into it, he was, he come in right after, Dunhart Sr. died. And we thought he was going to be Chevy for life, and that didn't happen. So he was one of the last people I thought I'd see in something other than a Chevrolet, and I wouldn't doubt it. I really wouldn't.
I wouldn't either, but I'm not going to say it's Robert or Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing jumping over to Dodge. I think it's more of a Team Penske. They were familiar with Dodge. They used to run Dodges with Rusty Wallace and Ryan Newman, as well as when Kurt Busch was there. So, I mean, Dodge knows Roger Penske, and I think that would be a better fit. And Dodge won their last championship there with Brad Keselowski in 2012. So they have a history there. But to your point, they have the history with Brad Keselowski as well winning that championship. But I think a team like Dodge is more suited for that. But my second pick would have to be, and this is a shot in the dark considering they're having great success this year, is a team like Trackhouse Racing, who just want to continue to get more funding, and they could probably do that with a new manufacturer coming in like Dodge. Austin, what do you think?
Yeah, I was either going to say Penske or RFK because Penske was Dodge affiliated before. And then the only reason I was going to say RFK is because Brad Keselowski drove for Dodge when he drove for Penske and done pretty good. But I'd have to go with Penske, and then I wouldn't say RFK wouldn't be too far behind them.
Okay. I mean, simple answers right there from Austin. And I have to say, great question of the week. I feel like we're talking more Dodge because we have a sense that Dodge might be coming back here soon.
Yeah, I've seen some prototype pictures, I guess, floating around. And, to answer your question about Trackhouse, though, I doubt they would. I feel like they got pretty good ties with Hendrick and all them too. So, I'm not sure where they get their equipment from. I think it is Hendrick equipment. It might not be. It may be like RCR or something like that, but I'm pretty sure it's Hendrick. But I just don't see them jumping ship. Not with this is their second full year in the Cup Series, and they got 3 wins on the series or on the season with the 2 drivers. So I just don't see them by no means.
Yeah, are you talking about the prototype pictures of? I think they had Alex Bowman's number on there.
Something like that. Yeah, it was a sharp looking car, and it looked legit. I mean, it looked like your newer, your body styles that you have in the Cup Series this year. So I really don't think they're too far behind. I would dare say maybe 2024 or something like that.
Yeah, I saw the pictures floating around on Twitter. It looked pretty sharp. So I don't think they're too far from coming back to the series.
I think it's just one of those things where we just have to wait and see. There's nothing saying that Dodge will come back to the sport. We all, I think, especially nostalgic fans that were especially big into it in the early 2000s, want to see another manufacturer come in. We used to see Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Pontiac, and a Toyota thrown in there would have been a great mix of cars. But now you only have 3, which is a detriment. But at least it's not like Indy Car where you only have 2, Honda and Chevy. So I'd like to see Dodge come back in. I think this is a great what-if question. But it's one of those questions that unless something happens, I won't believe it till I see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's got to be a lot of other factors that go along with them just popping back up into the series. So it's going to be a lot of trial and error for sure. And just have to see what happens in the next couple of years.
What was the reason they left the sport for?
That's a good question. I think it was a funding issue. I think it was probably more so funding than it was anything else. I think they just left the sport because they left the sport. That's a good question. That's a good little off-season podcast thing we could do on the side to keep things rolling here. But to be honest with you, I don't know why they left the sport. Maybe lack of TV rating. There was a lot of issues going on there in the early 2010s that I think caused a lot of teams and sponsors and companies to leave NASCAR. And I'm just going to go out and say it. I blame it on Brian France. To be honest with you guys, I think it's Brian France's fault.
Because they left the year after Keselowski won the championship with them, didn't they?
That's correct.
Yeah, so I don't know why they would have. I remember it, but I don't remember it them leaving. You think if you just won a championship with a car, you'd stay in the series and progress for the sport.
Yeah, I think you would, but we've seen a lot of manufacturers leave. We saw Pontiac leave mainly because I think GM closed down the Pontiac whole development and production of that car. So why put more money into NASCAR than you have to with that dying car? So that's why they pulled out.
So I'm reading a thing here, and it says, it's not necessarily that Dodge left Penske. It talked about Penske Racing, announced that March that it would be moving its 2-car team to Ford at the end of 2012. That decision, pretty much proved to be the final blow for Dodge and NASCAR because that was their best team to be with by all means. But sources, familiar with negotiations suggested that Dodge moved more decisively to re-sign Penske, and an agreement could have been reached. So Penske just didn't want to, but because of Dodge's parent company, Fiat, the Italians seemingly just not wanting to help as much. So it boils down to a funding issue. It really does. And that's more or less why Penske decided to leave Dodge as well and move forward.
Okay, so instead of blaming Brian France, which was probably a bad judgment on my call, I have to blame the Italians.
Yep.
Sorry, Italy. But that was our question of the week. Anything else you guys want to add in before?
No, let's jump to the races.
All right, let's jump to the races. Make sure to use hashtag what you think ITM on all social media platforms to let us know what you think about this week's question of the week and next week and this week's question of the week, this week's question of the week. Just let us know what you think using hashtag what you think ITM. Now we're going to get into the races. We're going to start off with Formula One here, like always. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Gentlemen, first impressions of that race.
Started off good, and then the Ferraris, boy, the Ferraris had all kinds of issues today. It was ridiculous, but I will say Hamilton had his best run of the season, finishing at 4th, I think. So, a little bit of momentum gained today for the Mercedes team of Hamilton, but it was the Verstappen show again. I mean, he murdered the field today.
It was Verstappen up until the point where it wasn't Verstappen. It was Leclerc up until the point where he went kablooey. And then Carlos Sainz had an issue. So this makes 2 weeks in a row, both Spain and the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, where Ferrari suffered a DNF with their top driver that has a shot of competing against Verstappen for the championship this season. That spells trouble because a few weeks ago, Ferrari was leading the Constructors' Championship, and now they are not. I'm going to bring up the standings here real quick. It's now Verstappen, Perez, and Leclerc, the top 3 positions for the Drivers' Championship, and now Red Bull has overtaken Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship, and Ferrari looked like they couldn't be stopped at any point during this season, and now all of a sudden, something bit them, and something's biting them hard.
Yeah, it's almost like the Verstappen issue where he would have a mechanical failure, win a race, have a mechanical failure, win a race. But with the Ferraris, it's just nonstop right now. I mean, they're blowing up left and right.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch the race. I had family stay up after the gender reveal. I did see that Verstappen won. I was excited by that. I think I'm new to the F1 racing, so I think I'm Team Red Bull. But who knows? Ferrari could have a turnaround here soon, and they'll, bounce back, and it'll be close at the end.
Well, 2 things to say to that, Austin. First of all, bandwagon jumper. Just going to call it like I see it. I like to bust your chops there, though. But second of all, Red Bull didn't really have a strong showing. But one of the big takeaways I take away from that race was Lewis Hamilton had an up and down day, but his car, I don't know. I know you didn't see it, Austin, but I don't know if you saw it, Charlie. Throughout the course of the race, it would just in qualifying and practice, it would just up and down. And it was the craziest thing I've ever seen. He couldn't have been comfortable in the car. He still eked out a 4th place finish. His teammate, George Russell, another podium for him. But man, I mean, answer me this as a driver, and Austin, you can answer this too. as a driver, if something's mechanically wrong with the car where it's just like up and down and you could hear it just bottoming out, just do. I mean, how does that affect you? Does that affect you more mentally or physically when you're racing?
Depends on when it's happening. I mean, if it's happening down the straightaway,
it's happening down the straightaway. Yeah,
that may be just more of an aero thing because let's face they were hauling butt at this track. I mean, speeds of almost 220 mile an hour, and I don't know that it wasn't just an aero thing, but as long as you're handling just fine, you're braking and handling just fine in the corners, and you're still moving up through the field. It may be uncomfortable, but you don't say anything. You don't worry about it. You put that in the back of your mind until something breaks.
What about you, Austin? How does that affect you as a driver? How would that affect you as a driver? More mentally or physically?
Probably mentally, because you're just thinking what's going wrong, what's fixing to break. Especially if you're running good, 1, 2, 3. You're holding on, just expecting the worst. Is the tire going to go down? Is something going to break and I'm going to hit the wall and I'm not going to finish today? That's probably what's going to go through your head. That's normally what goes through your head.
All right. Well, I got a special request here from our co-host here, so we're going to go ahead and stop the screen flipping. Eventually, we'll get to the point where we will have a producer here and maybe everybody in the shop one day. Let me get our background up. There we go. Now we're back here, three on run. I'm trying something new for YouTube. So forgive me on that.
And it's not a bad thing by no means.
Well, once StreamYard fixes their program, it's more of a StreamYard thing. It wasn't a problem on
it just seemed like I'm trying to listen and learn as well as we're talking. And it just seemed like there was a lot of pausing. And especially with us being live, it just okay. So anyway, we'll worry about the technical issues.
Yeah, I'm more of a visual person myself. Like I gotta see you talk.
Yeah,
to comprehend it.
Well, fair enough. Okay, so
I'm a millennial, remember?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and take care of that. But yeah, Azerbaijan Grand Prix was a great race. I think one of the top races of the weekend, if you had to ask me, just based on what I saw this whole weekend. Good race, exciting till the end, except when Red Bull just took off there. I thought Sergio Perez might have a chance at Max Verstappen. But even with that, I think Max Verstappen's the number one driver. He's the defending champion. I don't know if they would have let him pass him. It's the team hoarder thing with Formula One. I think we'll get more into that later on, maybe in the midseason review for Formula One. But that was the Formula One Grand Prix. Anything else before we get into Indy Car from Road America?
Yeah, how am I a bandwagon jumper? I was Team Red Bull when I first started.
I don't know. It's just a bandwagon thing, man.
Yeah, if he's going to be bandwagon, I guess he'd jump into F1 and be like, I'm a Hamilton fan.
He could have been, but then he would have been very disappointed this season.
I would have been like,
it took him into the register, and I was like,
as soon as you just said that, it looks like Austin's having technical difficulties. Don't know what happened, but he's left the building.
After I've got him that whole new microphone setup, but you sound great, by the way, Austin. It isn't echoing anymore. It sounds great.
There's a big difference, but
yeah, I appreciate you sending me the mic. I actually had but it works for me. He said, "Man, I listened to the podcast the other night, and you sounded terrible." I said, "We got the fix. It's going to be here Tuesday."
Yeah, we got the fix, and it makes all the difference. Did it with Charlie and do it with you, no problem whatsoever. The Indy Car race. Did you guys catch the Indy Car race from Road America by any chance?
I did not.
I did not.
Well, you didn't miss much. It was a boring race.
I had to work all weekend, so
it was interesting watching Roman Grosjean race through the field. I think he's one of the best drivers out there in Formula One in IndyCar right now, only because he's still relatively new to the sport, but he's adapted so well to it in his second season, way faster than Jimmy Johnson. I don't know what Jimmy Johnson's problem is. He does not. I think he's just old. Roman Grosjean a couple of years ago was being barbecued at B.U.R.N. in Formula One. I mean, old. Well, I think you're right. He's just old. Yeah. But at the same time, the IndyCar race, Joseph Newgarden won. Marcus Ericsson, the Indianapolis 500 winner, finishing second, and Alexander Rossi rounding out the podium. I was hoping that Roman Grosjean would at least get the podium. But there was a caution late in the race with 5 laps to go. And that's kind of what set up the bunch them together and then race, but there still wasn't really a race. It was kind of a boring race, if you ask me. But I'm not a big IndyCar guy. especially on road courses. This weekend was a road course weekend. And
IndyCar just performs better on ovals. I think that should be the F1 car on oval track for the most part. It's better racing to me when they race on circle tracks, not the road courses, so to speak.
And I feel like that with NASCAR as well. NASCAR is known for, lack of better words, going fast and turning left. Putting them on road courses. Now, I'll give you that. I will say this: one of the best road courses I've ever seen is the Roval. That is a fun race. You get to see the whole racetrack. But if you go to a track like Charlie and I did, Watkins Glen, we saw them come down the front straightaway, go into turn one, and didn't see him again until they came down the front straightaway.
But it was good racing.
It was good racing.
I know from the track aspect and not being able to maybe see the whole race, but from a actual competition and racing side of it, the road courses have produced some really good racing, with an exception of today. Today, which I'm not complaining at all. I'm glad Suarez won him one, but today was a little bit different. Usually, the road courses here lately it's been, a lot of competition up front. So,
I think today's road course, and we'll get more into that, I feel, once we cover the Cup race. But today's road course and the road coursing in general, when it comes to NASCAR, not necessarily IndyCar, it's kind of like Formula One as far as open wheel, but NASCAR, I feel like it's only fun road course racing when it's on the Roval and when it's in the rain, like as we saw at Portland last week in the Xfinity Series.
And now you sound like some of the fans at Kinston that just want to show up to watch the wrecks.
Well, it's not even the wrecks; it's the X factor. It's a curveball thrown in there.
And I don't mind them racing. Don't mind them racing on, the wet tracks. It definitely is a curveball. It takes them out of their comfort zone for sure.
And I think that's the thing. I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It takes them out of their comfort zone as far as the drivers. It makes them a little more cautious, even though they're being really aggressive. And we saw that a lot last weekend in Portland. That was a fun race for me because it wasn't set in stone who would win, like it was kind of this weekend, especially for Formula One and somewhat with this Cup race that we saw in Sonoma. But it wasn't like that. Portland was fun to watch, and when I was watching that race, I was engaged with it. It drew me in because of that X factor and that curveball of the rain. Whereas now Sonoma was just, it was boring.
Yeah,
it was boring.
Sonoma really wasn't as good, only because I think I wanted it to live up to what, I hate saying this, but I wanted it to produce the same type racing that Coda did earlier this year.
Absolutely.
And I love the next gen car on road courses. I think it's a better road racing car than last year's car. So especially after that was great racing at Coda this past year. So maybe Sonoma's just hit or miss, and maybe later in the year, which we got, like I said, three more road courses coming up. So we'll see. Road America was a good race last year, so we'll see.
Yeah, we will. And I hate to say that. I'd hate to get rid of all road courses, but I do like the oval tracks better. I like to turn fast and go left. That's what I grew up on as a race fan. Formula One is great as far as street circuits and road courses. Those cars are built for that. Indy cars are somewhat built for that, but they do produce, in my opinion, better racing on the ovals, vice just making it so saturated in road courses. I'm glad that this year in NASCAR, we don't have an oversaturation, and 7 really isn't an oversaturation, but I feel like a third of the schedule almost, or a quarter of the schedule of road courses. And I don't want to see road courses. Some people might like road courses like Charlie, but I'm not a big fan of road courses. I'd rather see them race on the crappiest short track or intermediate track than suggest taking one of those away and go to a road course. But that's just me. The road course racing, it didn't really live up to the par that I hold it up to And now we might as well just get into it. Did anybody watch the truck race? We'll talk about NASCAR here in Sonoma race weekend this weekend. Did anybody watch the truck race?
I pulled a Matt Beamer, and then when I saw 4 or 5 Cup drivers in it, I boycotted it, and I watched the Southern Super Series late model race at Montgomery Motor Speedway.
Oh, we'll talk about that in our final thoughts. But yeah, I did the same thing. Once I saw Kyle Busch in there, let's see who else. Ross Chastain,
Alex Bowman,
Austin Dillon.
Suarez wound up racing in it, but he was as a backup driver.
He took over for Carson Hocevar.
Yeah, but Austin Dillon sucked in that race.
And I must say, I did the same thing. I saw the truck series. I saw Cup drivers in it. I switched it right off. There was no way I'm going to give him the ratings and the benefit of, hey, the truck series had good ratings at Sonoma when Kyle Busch races in it. And Kyle Busch, that's all he can win. That's all he can run well in his lower series. So he goes down there, puts some wind in his sails, and then comes out here Sunday and doesn't do well whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that kind of blows me away. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that Kyle Busch does that. I don't want to see him do that. I don't want to see any driver go down to the lower series and do that. And so I boycotted it. I didn't.
I mean, you don't progress anything from dropping from Cup to NASCAR trucks and winning.
You take away from Zane Smith, Ty Majeski, which I don't even think he should. Yeah, he should be in it. I'm thinking Sam Mayer for some reason. Chandler Smith. Kyle Busch is taking food off of his team's table and putting it on his plate.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like. In a Kyle Busch Motorsport vehicle, he takes food off of Chandler Smith's plate, who could have finished 4th, but since Kyle Busch was racing, finished 5th.
But let's face it, this sport has become yes, sponsorship is everything. But the people that pay for advertisement in this sport now, they want their best chances of getting the most out of their money, the more bang for their buck. And there's a reason why certain sponsors sponsor certain races, and that's going to be because of who's driving that truck, so to speak, for that particular race. I hate to say it, but money is what makes the world go round. Even into unfortunately, it's what's taken over motorsports altogether, not just NASCAR. It's from the lowest level up. So it is what it is there. I did watch it. I watched it on the way home from the reveal. I pulled it up and set the phone on the dash over the speedometer, and I watched it as I was driving down the road.
That is so dangerous.
But I did watch it. It wasn't a horrible race. But like you said, I was highly disappointed when there was like 6 Cup drivers racing in it. I didn't mind Suarez running in it because he didn't start it. Yeah. He was there solely as a backup or a last resort for, the golden child of the truck series, Hocevar. But it is what it is. Unfortunately, it's not going away. We preach on this all the time. It's definitely not going away. So it's a money thing, man.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And unfortunately, the almighty dollar dictates a lot, not just in motorsports, but in life. And you want to get away from that. You want to keep it as pure as you can. I think the purest racing on earth is local short track racing. And it's only because people take money out of their pocket, put it in their car, and they race well. And it's a hobby. It really is.
I'm not interrupt you. Well, I am interrupting you, but there's a lot of those that's not even what that is anymore. It's a short track race. It's not when you get into the world of super late models and stuff like that. And that's the reason why, like me and Austin, we're both, pretty big Bubba Pollard supporters in the super late model world. This guy pays for all of his own stuff. I mean, yeah, he may have some people helping him as far as, monetary donations here and stuff like that, but he funds his own stuff, and his family comes and helps him at the track, stuff like that. And there's just getting to be less and less people like that. Unfortunately, it's more of a pay-to-play ride, and that's the reason why I asked Howie that question. I wasn't trying to be a butthead, but that's why I asked Howie that question whenever we had him on the show. Did y'all buy these cars, or did you,
stroke a check and
pretty much rent the car for the weekend, so to speak? So, and Howie got my respect then whenever he said, we bought them. They just kind of helped us set it up for whatever particular track being we bought it from them, which is completely understandable. So.
Yeah, and if you go to any of your late model races, there's only going to be about 4 or 5 teams that are their back pocket funded. Everybody else is like Anthony Campy. Cut me a check. If you wreck it, cut me another check. We'll see you next race.
And I forgot where I was going with that. I'd hate to see that, but the passion of, Charlie doesn't bring home a paycheck, and this doesn't feed his daughter. This doesn't put a roof over his head. This doesn't put food on the table and gas in the tank. It's a hobby. At the end of the day, and I'd hate to take it away from you, Charlie, because I support you 100%. But at the end of the day, it really is a hobby.
No, it is. I mean, let's face it. Yeah, I drive for somebody.
Right.
But I lose money by going to drive for him.
Right.
So by the time I pay for like me and Kelsey and Emma and Austin to get the track.
That fabulous spotter.
Yeah. So, by the time you pay for that and pay for freaking diesel fuel right now to get there, and then you fill a generator up with gas, all these little things just add up. But at the same time, I'm one of the people that since they could walk has done nothing but grow up in this sport. And I love the sport and I respect the sport. And it tears me up to see what a lot of the, pay to play rides, just for the fact you take away great racing, because there's plenty of other people that have the talent that would get in this ride. And not saying some of these guys don't perform good, because they do, but auto sports as a whole has become a business rather than a passion. That's how I should have let it off. It's a business rather than a passion nowadays, and I hate to see it, but it takes away from the little man, like myself and Roy and everybody that supports me, and even Austin and his family going drag racing. It takes away from people like us whenever you go to the track and you see all these pay to play rides. It's disheartening, because I'm like, man, that could have been me. I just don't have the money.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately the way it is right now, especially in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series, more so than the Cup Series. Maybe the Cup Series has some, but you're paying an awful lot of money to do it. I feel like some teams like a BJ McLeod, it is a hobby at this point. It's very expensive, though be it hobby, it's still a hobby. But I I hate to go down the rabbit hole, because we still have to talk about the Cup race.
Yeah, because I could have kept on going on that.
We could have went another hour and a half.
I could have got heated on that subject. So
right, and we have our midseason review. We're going to do a quick midseason review and then move on to the final thoughts here. But we'll talk about the Cup race here real quick. Yeah. Daniel Suarez finally getting his first career win in the Cup Series, the 5th non-U.S. born driver to do that in NASCAR's history. Overall thoughts of Sonoma. I'm going to start off with you, Austin.
I enjoyed the racing only because seeing Suarez get his first win, but there was something off about a normal road course race with this one. There was great racing, but there's just something off about this weekend's racing.
I felt like that too. It was just a road course heavy weekend. We didn't see a typical watch Formula One, watch Indy, which could be hit or miss with oval or road courses. And in NASCAR is usually ovals. So it was just a road course saturated week. And I think that took away from it for me for a little bit, but it was a boring race. I'm not going to beat around the bush. It was a boring race. Glad to see Daniel Suarez win. Glad to see him do well in Trackhouse, and Trackhouse do well as a whole now. But it was boring. It was a boring race. But here's what surprised me here. 6 out of the top 10 were Fords. Fords had a great day today. Mm-hmm. And here's another thing that surprised me. Out of the top 10 drivers, not one Toyota. You have to go all the way down to 18th. And the 18th place driver was Kurt Busch for 2311 Racing. Then you go further down, 26th, Martin Truex Jr., 27th, Christopher Bell, 30th, Kyle Busch, 31st, Denny Hamlin, and 36th, Bubba Wallace, although be it he had the engine issue, he's the only DNF of the day. But Toyota had a bad day. But the Fords really stepped up, especially the Penske Fords of Austin Cindric, who finished 5th, Ryan Newman, who finished 12th. Joey Logano finished 17th. It looked like he was going to be a contender all day. But Ford's really stepped up, and what surprised me is what Preston said on the comments here. Chris Buescher finishing 2nd, and Michael McDowell finishing 3rd. Congratulations.
Yeah, so
that's a good podium.
Yeah, you talk about the Fords finishing good. I wouldn't go as far as Michael McDowell. I would say you got Brad Keselowski, I think, finished 10th, and Chris Buescher finishing, what you did, 6th, I think?
Second.
Oh, yeah, second. Both the RFK boys finishing top 10. That's Brad Keselowski's first top 10 since beginning of the season, I think.
Daytona, maybe.
Yeah.
It's been a while for Brad Keselowski.
Huge. That is huge for that organization right there to get 2 cars in the top 10.
Right.
Especially one that was fast enough to compete for the win there for a little while before he used up his equipment. So I think, yeah, huge day for Ford, but even though RFK didn't get the win, that team won today with having both cars in the top 10, hands down.
And that was his second or third top 10 finish. Let me double check that. But he doesn't have many here in the 2022 campaign here. Let's see here. 1 top 10, 2 top 10. Then his third top 10 was Daytona. So yeah, 3 top 10s of the season for Brad Keselowski. Good for RFK, but it's not going to be good enough with 10 races to go in the regular season to get themselves a win. They got to get themselves into the playoffs. They got to get a win. Both, I feel like at this point, both drivers.
But I think both of them's going to have to win.
They're both going to have to win because right now, as it stands, Brad Keselowski, as far as the drivers' championship, I'm going to bring this up real quick. Buescher is 22nd, and Brad Keselowski's 30th in the drivers' championship. If you break it down into playoffs, Chris Buescher isn't even in the hunt right now that I'm seeing, unless you guys can correct me out there. And Brad Keselowski is 29th as far as the playoff standings go, as far as who's in and who's out. Yeah, RFK.
They're mathematically out of it without a win. I dare say.
Oh, 100%
that penalty, that penalty that Brad Keselowski got hit with at the beginning of the season, man, that was a gut buster there.
That was 100% a gut buster, and it goes to show that the little things that you try, especially with a brand new car, and we talked about it at the top of the season, with the rules that NASCAR brought to this next-gen car.
That they wasn't playing.
Years that they weren't playing. Brad Keselowski broke the rules. He got caught, and unfortunately, he felt the full wrath of NASCAR because he had to be the example when it comes down to everything.
Unfortunately.
and Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing was used as an example. It's like NASCAR said we're not playing games. These are the rules, and look what happened to Brad Keselowski and his race team. So don't play games. I mean, we've seen a lot of people get burned on tires.
So
Kyle Larson's team is going to be with tires this week. So NASCAR isn't playing games this season.
Yeah, and not to get off on a rabbit hole, Larson and them's got to win to, if I'm Cliff Daniels, I'm drinking mimosas on
taking a vacation.
I'm going to the mountains or the beach. I'm going away.
Yeah, I'm going to give the guy behind me a shot to prove himself, so to speak. So, here, I'm delegating. But anyway, with the wheels, I heard something, on the back of the wheels, we talked about it earlier in the year where the actual rotors and stuff like that, it's not just putting the wheel on. There are actual notches sticking off the rotors and stuff like that these wheels, small lugs, so to speak, that these wheels have to sit on. Where I think we're messing up is I think we may have to make those just a little bit longer. Or on the back side of the wheels, there's 18 holes. I think that's too many. I think you you cut it down a little bit. These guys used to put 5-on-5. You know, I think take away the 18 holes on the back of the wheel and make it fewer. I think they just a lot of times they get in such a hurry that there's so many holes and so few that you have to line up that you got to. I think they're just slamming it on there a lot of times, and
hoping
a lot of times,
sticks.
a lot of times it does stick. But here we are. You know, that one time you thought it stuck. You picked the 5 times to leave me loose wheel.
Vacation.
Yeah. So I say take away some of the holes on the back of the wheel and put it back in the pit crew guys' hands. So they actually have to not just assume sometimes that it's on there and know that it's on there. But at the same, the argument can be made that once you're on there, try to turn the wheel real quick, and you'll know
give it a shaking motion.
Because you'll know real quick. Oh my gosh, I can still turn it. It's not on there. So that's my opinion. But I don't get paid the big bucks to design stuff. So,
but I will say this: Chase Elliott's team caught the loose wheel when he was leaving. So it is possible for a team member, especially a tire changer, to go, I didn't get that on, and wave his hands or do whatever signal that he does to the crew chief. The crew chief say, stop, back him up, make sure it is tight, and then send him on his way.
Absolutely.
You kind of pay. So it's out there. Teams are starting to now recognize I didn't get the wheel on.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a quick signal and they bring the car back. So, and it wasn't a Hendrick organization. So Hendrick talked about this. Chase Elliott missed that, or not Chase. Chase Elliott's team caught that. Kyle Larson's team didn't, though be it Kyle Larson did finish the race and didn't get a DNF. He came back around and put the right front tire on. It's still going to cost him. And unfortunately, Cliff Daniels gets an extended vacation. But like you said in our text chain, he is locked into the playoffs. So really no harm, no foul there. Except for maybe building on that.
Yeah, I think if you're going to try anything, now's the time. What you got, Austin?
I didn't have anything.
All right. Well, that was our – we'll go quickly do this race of the weekend for you guys before we get into our midseason review here and talk about that real quick. What was the race of the weekend for you, Austin?
I'm going to go with the super late model race in Montgomery. I know nobody watched it. I did.
Nah, I went back and watched the highlights today. Pretty good racing throughout. I don't know who that boy was that won it, but
William Sawalich. He drives for Donnie Wilson.
Donnie Wilson. Okay, all right. So, congratulations to him. I thought Bubba had a shot there, but I guess just fell off at the end. I mean, he was passing cars on the outside.
Yeah, that's what was cool to me.
Yeah,
him and Augie Grill are the old geezers in the sport, and they just hang him out the left side window and just pass him on the outside.
Yeah, sure enough. But his stuff fell off there at the end, and I think he wound up finishing like 4th or 5th or something like that, if not further back.
Bubba pulled off. He pulled in the pits. I don't know what happened, but he didn't finish.
I got you. Race of the week for me. I didn't watch the Indy Car race, but so to be honest with you, I gotta go with. I'm gonna go with the F1 race this weekend, only because I didn't watch the Indy Car race, and Truck Series. You had all the Cup people running in it, and I was just let down today watching the Sonoma race. It's sad to say that I hoped it lived up to the racing that we saw at COTA earlier this year, because it was battle for the lead the whole race at COTA, and it didn't. It was, don't get me wrong, Suarez won his race, and, Daniel's Amigos was happy, but, I got to go with the F1 race. I'm happy with what F1's brought to the table this year with the new car, and it's produced a lot of good racing. So, but on that note, I'd be mad, boy, if they told me, hey, you know, you need to hold your spot. We're going to finish right here. Don't pass your teammate, even though you got a faster car. And I think that was, what was it, Ricardo and Alonso?
No, Ricardo and Norris are teammates.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Norris and Ricardo, man, don't tell me to hold spot here. And even he was mad about it because he said, well, you know, we did that for a pit strategy or something like that. We're doing this for position and points. So why, you know, you're telling me to repay the favor, but it's costing me more. So I get where he was upset, and I'd be bringing that up at the team meeting tomorrow morning for sure.
You just dump your teammates to gain a position, don't you?
Whatever. I didn't even touch you. I just made you so nervous that you slipped up.
Well, I would have to agree with Charlie. The race of the weekend for me was the Formula One race there at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. It was good racing all around. There was good drama with Ferrari going out. Unfortunately for me, I picked them to win. I need to stop picking Ferrari to win the races coming up. But it was a good race from start to finish. You never know in Formula One what could happen, especially at the end of the race. We saw Lance Stroll come in because of some type of vibration or something wrong with the engine that they came in with 3-4 laps to go and said, park it, you're done. And that's just the way Formula One is. If they see something wrong with it, they're going to park it and be done with it. George Russell getting the podium again, carrying really the banner for Mercedes right now because Lewis Hamilton, I don't know what's going on with Lewis Hamilton, but I did tweet out after the Formula One race, my biggest fear now is that Max Verstappen and Red Bull have become the new Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes in Formula One, just winning everything, doing really well. And we saw it back in the day with Sebastian Vettel racing with Red Bull in Formula One. Maybe Red Bull's back on top and they're going to win 4 championships in a row, and it's going to go right back to the Mercedes, whomever that may be, George Russell and somebody else. But that was our races of the week in racing wrap up. And now we're going to get into our midseason review for the NASCAR Cup Series. Going to start off easy question. Biggest surprise of the first half of the season for you guys?
Go ahead, Austin. You lead off with this one.
The biggest surprise to me is all the first-time winners this year. I really didn't expect all the new winners like Chastain, Suarez, Cindric win the 500. That's probably got to be the biggest surprise for me this year.
That's a good one. Yeah. What about you, Charlie?
So, you know, we had hoped that the car itself would hold up this year. And not only has it held up, but the biggest surprise to me is how drastically it's changed the racing at tracks. 1.5 mile races have gotten a lot better. Short track racing's got worse. And even till today, road course racing was pretty good. So that's my biggest surprise. Like, after the Coliseum race, I was like, man, this is going to be a good year. Like, I'm looking forward to it. And then we go into our actual short track races, and I'm like, this is crap. I'd rather watch Austin spin out in front of me. You know, I don't know. But the 1.5 mile races is it has produced really, really good 1.5 mile races.
The 1.5 miles have surprised me. For the past couple of years, we were talking, and NASCAR fans, I think we've said it a time or two on the show that the 1.5 mile tracks aren't living up to what they used to. And now we're seeing really good racing there at the 1.5 mile tracks. But the biggest surprise for me would have to be I guess still growing pains with the car. And we didn't get much testing from it. We didn't get much real world testing from it like we did with the introduction of the car tomorrow, where they ran it in certain races, which I wish they would have done. Just like the introduction to that, so teams would have at least had some ideas on how to work on it. But the car itself really did surprise me. It's really surprising me. It's really living up to expectations. And I think in some cases, exceeding expectations. To Austin's point, we've seen a lot of first-time winners. Has it leveled out the playing field completely? No, we're not seeing teams like BJ McLeod racing up there with the likes of Joe Gibbs racing, Hendrick Motorsports, and Penske. And you're not going to race up there with those teams because Hendrick, Joe Gibbs, Penske have the money. They have the engineers. They have the resources in order to test out everything and create those engines to
Yeah.
building their perfect performance in the chassis. So you're not going to get that. You're going to get, it's not going to be a level playing field like we saw, maybe out of restrictor plate track like Daytona, Talladega, but it's still not there. But it's been surprising that the cars held up to the rigors that we did, especially with Chris Buescher flipping there at Charlotte, which is weird to say, but it's holding up. There'll be some tweaks have to be made with the left rear and right rear tires, I feel. But overall, the car has been the really surprise for me. What were you going to say, Charlie?
So, you talk about it hadn't leveled out the playing field as a whole, with, B.J. McLeod not running as great.
Not to the expectation where I feel people.
Right. But
to it.
I think that goes back down to, you get what you put into it. And Trackhouse is running this thing like a business. Like, they're not running this like a hobby. They're there to win, and they're there to go after a championship. Whereas you go to people like B.J. McLeod, and I'm not down on him at all. Heck, I'd jump in that car and drive it, right now if they'd let me. Whether it was lesser equipment or not, like out of 36 cars, Charlie Hercus finished 37th. Like there wasn't even 37 that started. By God, Charlie Hercus finished the race. That's how happy and thrilled I'd be to do it.
Damn pace car finished in front of you.
Yeah, no doubt. But I'd be happy to do it, and that's my point. Is we talked about treating it as a hobby and stuff like that earlier. I think B.J. McLeod, if you're going to look at those business and hobby, I think you got people like Trackhouse and all them that's in the business category. And then you got people like B.J. McLeod that's still in the hobby category. So you get what you put into it, just like you do everything in life.
Totally agree with that. And yeah, I think that's just one of those things. It really did surprise me. The performance of the cars, it lived up and exceeded expectations to various degrees. Now your biggest disappointment of the season. And this could go many different ways. I'm curious what you guys think. You guys want to go first, or you want me to go first?
We'll let you go first.
Okay. So the biggest disappointment for me thus far in the season has been short track racing.
Yeah.
The short tracks were a big push. NASCAR fans wanted to see more short tracks on the schedule. NASCAR fans wanted to get away from the intermediate tracks. And the car, or the Gen 7 car, has flipped at 180, where we're seeing the short tracks run horrible, boring races, mainly on flat. And like Charlie said last week, we're going to have to wait to see what happens in New Hampshire. And the mile and a halves have been producing great racing. Like this, a couple weeks ago, the Coca-Cola 600 was one of the best races I've seen all year. Mm-hmm. In fact, in my whole time watching racing, it's been one of the best races I've seen. But seeing the short track package the way it is, and NASCAR's got to fix a few things, and I think the teams have to fix a few things before they go back to Martinsville again, especially. Maybe get rid of I've heard rumors and talks of getting rid of the diffuser, dealing with gearing issues. I've heard a whole bucket list of what they might change before they go to that. Or we'll just fix it for 2023 and take the loss. And I feel like we're almost at that point right now with a handful of races to go before the playoffs start. But the short track racing for me has been one of the biggest, if not the biggest, disappointments of the year.
So I'd probably say the tire issues. I know it's not a Goodyear issue, I don't think, but if it's the teams, trying to get every inch out of it, you would think by race 4 or 5 of them blowing left rears out, they would try to go the opposite direction and fix it. There's been a lot of blowouts, been a lot of teams fall out of it. I wouldn't say fall out of a race, but fall back in a race and not get the proper points they deserve. So, it's you got to start going. You can only go in one direction one way, then you got to start going another direction. I think if they grasp that concept and start testing and seeing what works, what doesn't work, instead of just trying to hound on it and what doesn't work and try to fix it, it'd be a lot better. But that's going to be my disappointment. It's going to be the tire situation.
Right. And I agree with that as well. That's a close second for me. Charlie, what about you? Biggest disappointment of the season so far for the NASCAR Cup Series?
Definitely, the exact opposite of what I said on, biggest game was the short track racing. It sucked this year. Martinsville is one of my favorite races to watch, and that was garbage. Bristol wasn't the best. I do hope they get rid of the diffuser like you were talking about and go a couple different routes on that. The tire issue, I think Goodyear's got a little bit of an issue, but I still feel like Goodyear's got an issue because of what the teams are doing. So it's a little bit of both, but I think majority of it there is on that. We've seen a lot of tire issues this year. So, but I'd have to say where I said racing was an improvement, racing is also the loss with the new car as well with your short tracks, because that's the heart and soul of racing. It's short tracks, and if you can't fix your problem there and make some gains, NASCAR's got a long road ahead of them with this next gen car.
Yep, and I think they're going to fix it. They have to fix it. There's no way you can run a Martinsville race like that again.
No,
now, it's going to be in the playoffs this next upcoming race. I don't know why I'm going off the rails like that, but then you go to Phoenix again for the final race of the season. And in fact, you're going to go over to Phoenix again next year for the final race of the season in 2023. Not a big fan of that, but I think, I heard this from the guys from Blind Spotting in their podcast. NASCAR is probably waiting for the TV deal to renew in 2025 before they start moving that around or consider moving that to a different place. So I'm going to bank on what Travis said from the Blind Spotting NASCAR podcast and say, hopefully that holds some water that come the renewal season there is. But okay, our final question here for the midseason review is, with 10 races to go in the regular season, and those races are Nashville Speedway, Road America, Atlanta Motor Speedway, New Hampshire, Pocono, Indianapolis Road Course, Michigan, Richmond, Watkins Glen, and Daytona. Which one are you most looking forward to? And which driver do you think that's currently outside of the playoff picture? And those drivers are Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell, Eric Almirola. They're currently in the top 16 right now if the playoffs started today. And those outside of the top 16, I'm going to only go 4 down. Kevin Harvick, Tyler Reddick, Eric Jones, and Austin Dillon. Which race are you most looking forward to? And which driver do you think will be the surprise upset winner at one of those races? Going to start off with Charlie.
Honestly, I hate to say it. Yeah, Nashville's coming up, and I think that's going to be a great race in a couple of weeks. But I'm looking forward to the Atlanta Motor Speedway race, only because I want to see what changes they make to the car and what package they decide to bring to figure out where they're going to go with Atlanta Motor Speedway after that race, and where they're going to go for next season with that. So I'm looking forward to Atlanta, to be honest with you. And as far as, I guess, what was the people to win?
Yeah, who currently not locked into the playoffs? I'm just going to go ahead and read you who's locked into the playoffs.
Yeah,
Chastain, Elliott, Logano, Byron, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Alex Bowman, Kurt Busch, Daniel Suarez, Chase Briscoe, and Austin Cindric. So anybody that are not those drivers, who do you think is going to pull the upset here or win their way into the playoffs to lock themselves in?
So with the road courses that's coming up, I dare say McDowell gets his way in this year because he ran it extremely well today. And that team, he's gotten a good, consistent pace going for him here lately. So I feel like McDowell could get it done and lock himself in. Now, how deep he goes into the playoffs is a whole different story, but we'll cross that bridge whenever the playoffs start.
Yeah, cross that bridge.
But I feel like, with the road courses that are coming up, and you still have, Daytona on the schedule and Atlanta on the schedule, depending on what package they take to Atlanta, I say Michael McDowell locks himself in.
All right. That sounds great. I like that pick. I think Preston would agree with you as well. What about you, Austin? Out of the tracks coming up here, which one are you most looking forward to, and which driver that is currently not locked into the playoffs do you think surprises us all and locks himself in the playoffs after Daytona?
For the tracks, looking forward to, I'm gonna say Pocono, the Tricky Triangle. I know we've seen a couple of right front issues with the old car. It cost Kyle Larson a win, I think, last year. So I'm wondering to see if left rears will play a factor in this race. So that's gonna be my race I'm looking forward to. Drivers that aren't locked in, might have to say Blaney's gonna win his way in. He did win a race, but that one didn't count.
All right, low-hanging fruit, and that was a horrible race. We never will talk about the All-Star race again this season because that was horrible. We should avoid that like the plague. As for me, I'm going to go with the driver I think who will race their way in. That will be a surprise. And with the tracks coming up, I'm going to have to say, and this is going to be controversial, but I think at Daytona, before the regular season ends and we get ready for the playoffs, he runs well at play tracks. I think Bubba Wallace locks himself in at Daytona. He runs well there, and I think he locks himself in before the season finale for the regular season and puts himself into playoff contention there with his teammate Kurt Busch. And the track, as far as I'm looking forward to, just to see how it will deal with the Gen 7 car, would be New Hampshire. It's considered a short track. It's right there in between a short track and intermediate track, I feel.
Yeah.
But it's a flat track, and I'm curious to see how they will do there, especially after running at Atlanta again and before running at Pocono. So I'm going to be sandwiched myself in between you guys and be the cream and the Oreo, for lack of better words. And that was a horrible analogy, I feel.
That was a very, very
not with us two. You don't want to do that. Not again.
No,
I'm going to be there's no way to put it. I'm going to be New Hampshire. I'm just going to stop right where I'm ahead and say New Hampshire Motor Speedway is the race I'm most looking forward to, only because it is the flat track. Curious to see how the Gen 7 does on that track, and curious to see how the drivers react to that track and do well on there.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to throw one more curveball question in there. If you had to pick someone who's currently in the top 30 in points, that isn't a big name driver, and I'm talking like a Todd Gilliland, Harrison Burton, Cole Custer, Ty Dillon, Justin Haley, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Eric Jones, who do you think, and Charlie already said Michael McDowell, so I'm going to take that as his answer. So, Austin, this is really pointed towards you. Out of all those drivers, who do you think will be maybe an upset?
It had to be between Todd Gillen and Harrison Burton. I'd have to say Harrison Burton.
All right, Harrison Burton. I'm going to say Justin Haley. Kaulig Racing ran well, though be it with AJ Allmendinger at the Indianapolis road course. But Justin Haley also has a Daytona win, though be it rain shortened. Still has a Daytona win.
It counts.
It counts.
He's got the trophy hanging up somewhere.
Yep, he does. So, I mean, I think Justin Haley might be if anybody, the Cinderella story. Now, to Charlie's point, where he goes in the playoffs is yet to be determined. Yeah, and we'll get more into that once we get to the Southern 500. But, gentlemen, anything else before we get into our final thoughts here?
Yeah, I like your pick on the New Hampshire, only because after last week of what we've seen at Worldwide, Technologies Raceway or whatever, with the flat track and a lot of left rear issues and whatnot, New Hampshire's also flat. And if I'm not, what is it, a mile track? I believe it's a mile.
Smidge over a mile.
Yeah. So it's flat. And we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, I can't wait for it. I can't wait for all three of those races that we picked here: New Hampshire, Atlanta, and Pocono. Going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for that. Upcoming races for this weekend: the Cup and Xfinity drivers are off this weekend. However, the trucks will be racing Saturday, June 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a FS1 from Knoxville, and that's a 150 lap race. It looks like
what time was that? 9
o'clock from Knoxville Raceway.
Okay.
That's the dirt track, right?
Yeah, it's dirt.
Yeah, it's dirt.
I think it's going to be a great race.
That's going to be fun. I can't wait for that. Now, again, if I see a Cup driver in there, I'm going to boycott it, unfortunately. And
I don't think you will, since they're not racing this weekend either. So,
touche. Way to call me out on live television here,
You're
Charlie.
welcome.
Really do appreciate that. And
What we're here for.
And Formula One will be raced in the Canadian Grand Prix, first time since 2019 that they're going to be in the great country of Canada for a Grand Prix. That race is going to be June 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN. So no need to set your DVR.
Watch that one live.
You can watch that one live. I mean, I watched the Azerbaijan Grand Prix live. I woke up at 7, and I still watched it live. But yeah, that was it. Gentlemen, anything else before we get into our final thoughts, our fantasy standings updated from Sonoma this week in NASCAR, and our question of the week? I got a good question of the week here. I think a lot of people will scratch their heads about here. So, but anything else before we get into our final thoughts here?
Are we going to pick the drivers
now
or later?
Okay, we'll go ahead and pick the drivers here. Who's going to win, or who do you guys have picking to win? Thank you, Austin, by the way. Who do you guys have winning the truck race from Knoxville and the Formula One race from Canada?
Austin, you called it, so you go ahead and pick first there.
Absolutely.
I'll go last on this one.
For the truck race, I'm going to go with Stuart Friesen.
Son of a gun.
I know. You can pick him too. Since it's on dirt, F1, I'm going to get on my bandwagon and rolling out of here for Verstappen.
All right. Well,
low hanging fruit. I know. I said it for you.
Hey, back a few years ago when we started rambling about racing, when it used to be called in the marbles, you could just say who's going to win the Formula One race. Lewis Hamilton. Always pick Lewis Hamilton. So it's better to hear Max Verstappen and somebody else besides Lewis Hamilton. For the Truck Series race, I'm going to have to go with John Hunter Nemechek to win that. And for the Formula One race, I hate to pick Ferrari, because every time I do, they've blown an engine and done horrible, especially
just go with Haas then.
No, let's give myself a fighting chance here. I'm going to see the results here real quick. I'm going to see the standings here real quick. I didn't do my homework on this because I wanted to pick Ferrari again, but it's just not going my way. Lando Norris. He's doing well in the McLaren. Him and teammate Daniel Ricciardo are doing pretty decently, finishing in the points. He's 7th in the points right now. He has no shot, I feel like, of winning the championship, and McLaren doesn't have any shot of winning the Constructors' Championship unless everybody wrecks on lap 1, turn 1, and they start finishing the races. But I think Lando Norris upsets everybody there at Canada. All right, Charlie, now the pressure's on you. Who wins the truck race and who wins the Canadian Grand Prix?
So I'm going to go with Perez in the F1. So, truck race, I don't want to pick the same way. I was going to go with Stuart Friesen, but
Infinger.
I mean, he's almost got him a dirt win.
I mean,
I'll go with Crafton. And I hate to say it, but I think Crafton's done. So, but I'll go with Crafton. Well, it's a different topic, different time. That's the end of the season review there. So,
is Sauter or Bodine running this race?
I have to see the injury list, but I want to.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think that'd be a contender for the win, anyways.
But okay. So, just before we get into our final thoughts here.
Nope. No, I'm good.
White flag, white flag, white flag. 1 lap to go. 1 lap, Raider.
Final thoughts here on rambling about racing. If you joined us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube Live, really do appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well as like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We really would appreciate that. It'll just get the word out there more. We're growing steadily, but we could grow faster, and that's all up to you guys who support us on the show. So our driver or this week in NASCAR fantasy standings and question of the week. I'll take care of the question of the week and this week in NASCAR. Charlie, do you want to deal with the fantasy standings first, or do you want to
go ahead while I pull up the fantasy standings?
Okay, so this week in NASCAR, we go back to June 16th, 1985. Bill Elliott wins his 7th super speedway race in 9 starts, taking the checkered flag in Michigan's Miller 400. Darrell Waltrip finished as a distant second and trails Elliott by 86 points in the championship race. And that happened on June 16th, 1985. And now for our question of the week, and make sure to let us know what you think using hashtag what you think ITM for that question of the week, is one that I'm kind of stealing from the Dale Jr. download, but at the same time, I don't feel like I am stealing it from the Dale Jr. download.
Charlie, don't answer it. Charlie, don't answer it. It's question of the week for next week.
I know. I'm not going to answer it.
And it has to deal with the Xfinity series. One of the Dale Jr. download questions when he was live was, does the Xfinity series need a crown jewel race? And he brought up some good points and what makes a crown jewel, but that's not the question of the week. The question of the week is this: does the Xfinity series have a real identity in the world of NASCAR? The truck series has the trucks. So if you want to sell trucks, it's good for Chevys, Toyotas, and Fords, like F-150s, 1500s, and Tundras. The Cup Series is good for Toyota as far as Camrys, Ford, and Chevys. They're good for those. But the Xfinity Series doesn't really have an identity.
So you're asking,
Well, shouldn't the Xfinity Series switch it up to the point where they run maybe an E-Class? Have that be our electronic series, like our hybrid series. Something so unique to separate themselves from the Cup Series.
Almost like, what's their spot in NASCAR? Where's their place?
Other than the stepping stone to the Cup Series.
Other than the stepping stone to the Cup Series, and I'm not saying it still can't be a stepping stone to the Cup Series, but I'm saying the Xfinity racing, it's hit or miss. And it could be boring, it could be exciting, but should the Xfinity series find its own new identity? And again, I'm taking this from the Dale Jr. download and kind of paraphrasing it, but I heard it and I thought it would be a good question of the week for those. And I know a lot of our fans might listen to the Dale Jr. download and might have an opinion about this, might hopefully get a good response from it. But should the Xfinity series find their own identity? And I'm not saying it has to be an electronic series. I'm not saying it has to be a hybrid series or like a SUV series, like the Ford Explorer of whomever is of Riley Herbst is coming down. You know what I mean?
The GMC Acadia.
A GMC Acadia. Just something like that or a 4-cylinder car. It doesn't have to be a V8 engine. It doesn't have to be a hybrid engine. It doesn't have to be that. It could be a 4-cylinder series. If the racing's good, people will watch it.
Yeah, because Gibbs would have brought the dang biggest SUV Toyota made so he could run over everybody.
Right, or a front-wheel drive series. But, could the Xfinity series expand from just a V8 carbureted engines and being just known as the stepping stone in the AAA of NASCAR's Cup Series and actually produce something that would, one, draw new sponsors to the sport, make manufacturers more invested in the sport for their products coming onto the production line to promote? And would it long story short, should the Xfinity series rebrand itself and form its new identity besides just racing regular cars? That's the question of the week. I think it's a good one. And again, reiterating this. I'm stealing it. I'm kind of stealing it and twisting it up from the Dale Jr. download, but they put it out there. They're listened a lot, and I do listen to them. So that's our question of the week. And now, Charlie, fantasy standings for this week's race or today's race following Sonoma.
So
disclaimer, I forgot to set my lineup. So if I fell down in the points, that's why.
It's like 2 weeks in a row.
No, it's not 2 weeks in a row. It's the second time though.
It's happened before, but I was bastarding it up this weekend, and I was just kind of doing my thing. I totally forgot about the fantasy standings. But anyway, fantasy standings following today's race at Sonoma there, Charlie.
All right, so we're going to read off the top 10 because I'm pretty sure the 11th and 12th of 43 and me and Z-Cleave 7 aren't even like battling anymore. So sitting 10th is B93 with 2,176 points. Carrying the Toyota banner and sitting 9th is Summers Racing with 2,181 points. Carrying the Ford banner, sitting 8th is Smoking Woody with 2,366 points. Matt is 7th with 2,547.
Didn't lose a spot.
Carrying the Chevy banner, Super Sumo 32 with 2,653 points. Rounding out your top 5 is 5th SMR R&D with 2,660 points. 4th SMR Operations with 2,678. 3rd S-Blades with 2,704 points. And then jumping up, gaining some points is Matt Camper, sitting 2nd with 2,828 points. And then I'm still sitting 1st, and I kind of stretched my lead back out after today a little bit, but with 2,922 points.
I just thought of this too today. If you were to lose this fantasy league championship, Charlie, I got a punishment for you. You're doing so well this season that if you were to lose it to Matt Camper or somebody else, I got a punishment for you.
Yeah. Well,
do we get to hear it? Or
I'm now leading in both my points and fantasy points. So
it's
a pretty good year for me right now.
Here's the punishment. So, okay, so you better keep it up because here's the punishment, and you have to do it because it's fantasy code. If you lose, even if it's by a point to Matt Camper or somebody else at the end of after the 36th race of the 2022 season, I'm going to buy you a Bubba Wallace hat, and you have to wear that all next season for Rambling About Racing.
I'm not wearing it all season.
No, you will wear it every time we record.
Unless you're going to come down here to my house and make me.
No.
I'm not wearing it.
It's as easy as you not being on the show, Charlie.
All right. Well, I guess it's down to 2 hosts.
Well, here's the thing. You better not lose this fantasy series championship or else you're going to be wearing a 2311. Now, if I was in the same position, you could make any type of rule and punishment.
I would not make you wear a dang Bubba Wallace hat all year.
But that's the rule, man. I mean,
it's not a rule. I didn't agree to it.
But it's not up to you. You lost.
I haven't lost shit yet.
But if you lose, you will have to wear. Okay.
Look, I gotta tell you can ramble on about this for the next 10 minutes. He's not gonna wear a Bubba Wallace hat.
Okay,
unless you physically reach out to Kelsey, and tell her.
Kelsey ain't gonna make me wear one. I'll say that now.
Make Charlie wear this hat.
Okay. Maybe not a Bubba Wallace hat. Okay, maybe that's a bit too
Austin Dillon hat.
No. I got a better one. Charlie's wearing a Dale Earnhardt shirt right now. I'm gonna make him a shirt on Teespring or Bonfire with the Dale Earnhardt 3 with a cancel symbol on it and say anybody but Earnhardt on it, and he has to wear that shirt if he loses this year's fantasy.
I'd wear that before I wore a.
Okay. Well, that's the compromise here.
Wallace shirt. Because anybody that knows me knows that's a.
I mean, I don't know why.
I'll just kind of sit down in the chair.
No. I want it to be seen the whole time. The whole time. That's part of the punishment, man. In fact, if I was leading the championship, you'd have to invoke a punishment for me. Is that not fair, Austin? And everybody else?
How are we going to do this for a whole season, though?
It's simple. Every time we record an episode of Rambling About Racing.
Absolutely. No, I'm not wearing the same shirt every season, every episode.
It's one episode.
Everybody, man, does that Charlie host ever wash his clothes?
But guess what? If regular listeners of the show and watchers on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter will know, hey, he must have lost a season fantasy league.
You're right.
I mean,
I may lose it. I'm not wearing the same shirt all year. I'm gonna tell you right now.
You're wearing it one day out of the week.
I don't care. I'm not wearing it every episode.
I mean, is he like this all the time, Austin? I know he is, but is he like this stubborn? I mean, when did he become so stubborn? He didn't used to be like this.
I don't know. I've known him for 5 or 6 years, and he's not always like this.
I like compromise, but this is not compromise at all.
Well, you're losing. It's a fantasy lose. You lose that. I mean, it's that simple, man. If you lose in fantasy, whether it's football and NASCAR, baseball, whatever.
Yeah, because if I win, I don't get to keep the card. So why would I wear the shirt?
Now he does have a point. Now he does have a point with that.
But I can't possibly make one of our viewers and listeners of the show like Matt Camper or anybody else make them do anything. But I can kind of nail you over there because you're a co-host. I mean, that's the way I see it.
You're right. I'll wear it for one episode and then we're done.
See, that's
so you better fall into the Daytona 500 episode.
That's crap, man.
We'll have to think of something.
We'll have to think of something.
You have to think of something. But I can't like physically wear the same shirt every episode. The only thing I do there is I wear the same underwear that I wore when I won the race. But that's it. But I'm not wearing the same shirt every episode. So.
I think you're just being stubborn and selfish.
You call it what you want, but
I mean, it's true.
You know, we could tell him to shave his head, but he shaves it every day.
Yeah,
so.
that's not a punishment here for Charlie. I mean, having him wear a Bubba Wallace hat.
You ain't gonna get him. You're never gonna catch him in any Bubba Wallace apparel.
What about a 2311 hat?
Get me a Kurt Busch, specifically a Kurt Busch
2311 hat. 2311.
Just 2311. Just 2311.
I'll take a freaking Sharpie and draw a dang Kurt Busch number on there, and I'll even forge his signature on there too.
His number's 45, by the way.
I even got this signed at Talladega by Kurt Busch.
We better knock that out when we go there. By the way, we're going there.
I was about to say
it is confirmed. We should have covered this at the top of the show, but Charlie took care of everything. We're gonna get ready go down there around.
I took care of everything with the intent on reimbursement, but I took care of everything on the front end. Here we go. Yeah,
we'll take care of you on the back end.
This is not a charity right here, okay?
Yeah, we're looking forward to Talladega. If you're going to Talladega, let us know. We'll let you know where we're at. Come and have a beer with us and talk about racing. We're going to bring all the podcast equipment. Oh, excuse me. We're going
to be roughly somewhere around the camp spots of 91, 92, something like that in Champions Corner.
In Champions, it's news to me. Okay, I know where we're going to be at, but I don't know exactly physically on the property.
Our spot's going to be the spot to be at. That's going to be Party Central.
Yeah, and we're going to have you can bring a golf cart,
but it's got to be. Here's the thing: it's got to be registered with the DMV, right?
It's going to be taken care of.
But see,
I already ordered the blinkers and stuff for Kelsey's golf cart. She has insurance on it already. Okay. We're just going to take it and get it registered. Done.
Here's the problem with that: should you be drinking? You get pulled over by a cop. You're driving a registered vehicle from the state of Alabama. You will get a DUI. That's how they get you.
They have to catch me first.
Oh, I will.
I go and listen. They're gonna catch you on a golf cart.
I will jump out and go.
I'm gonna run. I'm like, he was driving. Bye.
I'm not gonna play that game.
And I got us pretty close to the showers too. So.
Oh, that's good. I appreciate that. But gentlemen, that was our show. Really do appreciate everybody who stopped by, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, watching the show. Gentlemen, anything else before or listening on your regular podcast platform or Burns Radio? If we got to say that at the top of the show, gentlemen, anything else before we wrap it up here on this week's episode?
No, I'm good.
No, I enjoyed it. Glad to be back on for another week.
Yeah, fun episode. We're doing it on a Sunday, so it'll be released earlier. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Rambling About Racing. Thank you so much for all those who tuned in again on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube Live. Make sure to hit that notification and subscribe button for every time we come up and interact with us. We like talking to the fans and talking racing, no matter what series it is, Formula One, Indy, or NASCAR, local short tracks. Special shout out to our partners here, Stand Up to Cancer and Fanatics, for all they do for not only for the Unhinged or for Burns Radio and Belly Up Sports, but for us here at Ramblin' About Racing. Make sure to go ramblinaboutracing.com to links to all of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and now Twitch. So before we start up our gaming or Rambling About Racing gaming, for Charlie Hercus, Chuck 8384, Austin Reeves, Austin_Reeves 6 on Twitter. I'm Matt Beamer and Beamer 22 on Twitter. Stay safe and have a good rest of the week.